This week, when the Delhi High Court suspended the life sentence of former Uttar Pradesh MLA Kuldeep Singh Sengar for raping a minor and then also being responsible for beating her father to death, there was shock and outrage from all quarters. What seems to be a strange coincidence is that Sengar has an unbeaten track record in winning elections, and his party, the BJP, needs all the help it can get ahead of the upcoming Uttar Pradesh elections. However, the backlash forced the usually stodgy and slow-moving agency CBI to immediately announce they would be challenging the judgment in the Supreme Court because the court let off a man who should have been locked up for life. Instead, he has served for just 6.5 years. This simple fact is alarming enough, but what you may not know is the systematic way that the courts and justice system have left down a minor who's now a young woman in this case. In this video, I will tell you 5 reasons why. First, let me tell you the basic facts of the case which have been upheld by the trial court. On June 4, 2017, a 16-year-old girl in Unnao was promised a job and taken to the local BJP MLA's house at 8 p.m. in the evening. But instead of the job, the man who has won multiple elections from the area on a BSP and SP ticket before switching over to the BJP, he raped her. For this crime, Sengar was sentenced under the POCSO Act for raping a minor. Now, the key bit is that while raping a minor carries punishment for not less than 10 years, in this case, he was sentenced to be jailed for his entire life because he was an MLA, a public servant. That constituted under POCSO a crime of aggravated assault. And what happened this week is that the High Court simply said that an MLA is not a public servant. Which brings me to injustice number 1. Which is that while POCSO says that rape of a minor should have been a minimum of 10 years, Sengar has spent only 6.5 years in jail. He's not free yet because he's serving a sentence also for the homicide of the victim's father, which should give you an indication of the kind of person we are talking about. But the fact is that without spending the minimum amount of time under POCSO for rape, the court has upheld his right to get a suspension of sentence. The court, of course, says that he spent 7 years, 5 months, which they say is more than the punishment period for rape. The court decided that Sengar was not a public servant on the grounds that POCSO doesn't define who is a public servant. And in the absence of that, there is a Supreme Court order and IPC Section 21, which says that MLA is not a public servant. By this move, the court seems to have taken a very narrow view of what constitutes a public servant. The court justifies this by saying that Sengar isn't allowed to be near her and she still has CRPF protection. However, the courts in their own judgment also record that Sengar has influenced the CBI, the local Unnao authorities and others in providing fake documents and has also threatened others. So, if by public servant they mean someone who is in a position of authority which can be misused, Sengar is a textbook example. This brings me to injustice number 2. If you read the 55-page judgment, you will find these curious lines, and I quote, "It is an inescapable conclusion that the IO of CBI did not conduct a fair investigation in the matter, resulting in a disadvantage to the case of victim, survivor, and her family members," unquote. I have covered CBI for a long time and I have continued to track the investigating agency. I don't think I've ever come across a case where the investigating officer was put on record as being a compromised one. The particular officer is DSP R.R. Tripathi, and the court says that his work led to the charge sheet getting delayed. The court order also goes on to say that the IO known as Prosecution Witness 13 added confusion about the victim's mobile number. The court's observation came because when the officer was cross-examined by Sengar's lawyer, Tariq Anwar Mir, he couldn't hold up his case. The CBI was forced to say, in what is again extraordinary, and again I quote, "Mere opinion of an IO in a charge sheet has no evidentiary value." So imagine, after the trauma of rape and losing her father, the victim had to also undergo the injustice of having her case being dealt with someone who was compromised. Her lawyer, Mahmood Piraja, told me that he was hand in glove with Sengar and that's why created confusion about her date of birth and her phone usage, thereby weakening their case. Many facts, which only the prosecution and CBI would have known, were apparently leaked to Sengar's team. The third point of injustice is that CBI wasn't the first police force that led down the Unnao victim. Before that, the local police in Unnao had really covered themselves in glory. They refused to lodge an FIR, ostensibly because Sengar is very powerful in that region. So the victim's mother was forced to go to the court of the additional sessions judge in the area, and the police says that the victim came months after the incident. However, this is not supposed to be held against a victim in a rape case. In this particular one, she had said that she was threatened by Sengar, and we can see how her father was beaten. After Sengar's men beat her father, they also got him arrested and put in custody under some charge, and that's where he died from his injuries. And yet, the case shows just how the odds are stacked against a woman in sexual assault cases, especially when the perpetrator is a powerful one. One of the key concerns and point of injustice for the victim is her security. The threat is real and imminent because it's not just her father who has died because of this case. Two other relatives who were traveling with her also died in 2019, and the victim herself was injured when a truck with blacked out number plates collided with them. The threat is real enough for the courts to order the case to be transferred out of UP, for her to be given a place to stay in Delhi, and for her to get security. So someone who is guilty of homicide of her father and probably resents her for spending whatever years he has in jail may want to take revenge as soon as he is released. The court simply says that she can then approach the bench again. But could that be too late? And finally, the real tragedy of this is that the victim went through all this despite an assurance from the topmost office, that of the Prime Minister. In April 2018, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, responding to protests about the case, said, "I want to assure the country that no culprit will be spared. Complete justice will be done. Our daughters will definitely get justice." And yet, all these injustices have happened. Perhaps yet another intervention is required so that other victims of sexual assault do not fear the same fate or the same things happening in their cases too. All eyes are now on what the Supreme Court will do in this case.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the US will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry ghats.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HT videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.